All right. Thank you for that great presentation. And we'll now transition into a project that my course, my community health students did last spring. It was a program planning course, and we gathered data to try to inform an equity process guide for the community. So just a little bit of background. Our county, Douglas County, has a food system plan, and there are 5 goals within this food system plan. And one of the objectives is to create and foster an equitable food system. And so we worked with our partners, one of them, the Lawrence Douglas County Public Health Department, as well as the Douglas County Center for Sustainability, or I should say the Office of Sustainability. And we were tasked as a class to gather information to inform an equity process guide for the community. So we have 10 community gardens collectively within Douglas County. And now we have an 11th. As part of this project, we were to inform the site for an 11th garden. And so our students were tasked with, we had 5 groups, and each group was tasked with partnering with 2 gardens in collecting some formative data from stakeholders. And in this case, it was primarily the garden coordinators at each garden site to understand their perspectives of what's going on with the gardens right now and how could it be improved so that it is a more equitable opportunity for members of our community. And so to really understand the results of this project, I'm going to turn it over to one of my rock star students from this class, Gabi Talavera.
Thank you, Dr. Harvey. Hi, everyone. My name is Gabi Talavera. I'm a former student of Dr. Harvey's in the community health program. So for the purpose of this project, my group was assigned 2 sites, the first being the Garden Incubator in John Taylor Park, and the second being the Incubator Farm in North Lawrence. Our main liaison with the Common Ground program was Natalie Hubbard, who worked at the farm and volunteered as the garden coordinator for the Garden Incubator. So after interviewing her and conducting observations at both sites, we learned several different things. First, the farm had little parking and signage. It wasn't very easy to tell what the farm was or who could use it, which kind of acted as a potential barrier for new users. However, the current users ranged from experienced farmers to new groups to the program, such as Indigenous groups growing culturally significant foods, as you can see on the right. The Garden Incubator, however, had many users, and because we were looking at this using an equitable lens, we discovered that most of the gardeners there were middle class and white. They only had 1 raised bed for users with limited mobility, but planned to add more at the time. As we were kind of wrapping up our evaluation, we came to a couple conclusions after hearing from different classmates and from Natalie herself. First of all, improved communication methods were key if these sites were going to be effective. Most of the communication was primarily through word of mouth. Second, proper oversight and management, we learned, is a huge indicator of success. At the time, Common Ground had just hired a new program manager, and she really had her work cut out for her. Third, streamlining program operations could greatly reduce disparities between sites. These sites were running at severely different capacities. My group was fortunate enough to be assigned 2 well-running sites, but I know that wasn't the case for everyone in my class. And finally, personally, I just really benefited from this service learning experience. It really helped me with my internship, job applications as I'm approaching graduation, as well as just developing personal connections in my community that I will be forever grateful for.
All right. Thank you, Gabi, for that. So as you kind of heard from Gabi, the results, and this was pretty consistent across the board, although we were originally tasked as a class to begin gathering some of that formative data to inform an equity process guide for improving access and availability to community gardens, what our students kind of stumbled on is that there's some other things that really need to be addressed. And so we spent a lot of the semester gathering data for this project, but also looking at case studies of other gardens and what other community gardens are doing and what they should look like in communities. And so, as Gabi had said, the students, it varied across student groups as far as their findings, but there was a lot of consistencies as well. The majority of the population that uses these gardens are white, middle class, middle to older adults, those that usually have the resources to be able to expend funds to participate in some of these community gardens. One of our student groups really stumbled across a couple gardens that the access, if you were a community member, you would have questioned even being around that garden. There were locks on the gates and no trespassing signs. So pretty harsh, for it to be what is supposed to be a welcoming environment. So some of our feedback to our community partners was, some of these other things need to probably be addressed before we can really approach this equity guide. And the nice thing about these projects, and which is why I always encourage colleagues to be able to participate in service learning activities and to involve and engage their students as much as possible, is we've now spun off into other projects in collaborating with the Douglas County Sustainability and the Health Department to continue gathering this data so that eventually we can inform that process guide and help to develop it. I think one thing that we've learned, and my class certainly learned from this project, is COVID-19 disrupted a lot of things in our lives, and part of it was the food system. And so the students in this class had the opportunity to understand how those disruptions really impacted some of the more marginalized and diverse populations throughout the country and in our community as well. So what we thought was a strong food system had some gaps in it. And so they were able to really understand what equity is, to pick apart some of those gaps that they learned about just through the data collection, the partnerships with Common Grounds and the different stakeholders that they spoke with. And that now leads us to our next step. So I envision this project lasting me several more years with my students to be able to engage them with projects such as this. And that pretty much wraps up our presentation for today. Thank you for this opportunity. We really appreciate it.